Hi, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks. Today we are going to talk about system administration. This is going to be an interesting one for a couple of reasons. Number one, for most of you, you're going to see some things here that you're not going to see on your installation because either you're a cloud customer, well, actually, because you're a cloud customer, but unless you're a managed support user in a cloud installation, there are some things here that you just aren't going to see on your installation, largely because you don't really need to worry about them. It's something that we handle at BP Logix. But if you're an on-premise customer, you'll definitely see these items because they are relevant to you and you'll need to know how to fill them out. So there's going to be some stuff that if you're a cloud customer and you are not a managed user, you're not going to see. Now, for many of our cloud customers, all the BP Logix account is always a managed user account. But for many of our cloud customers, some of the internal employees of the organization are also designated as managed users. They will see these things. So depending on whether you're a managed user or not, as a cloud customer, you may or may not see some things. Also, we're going to be looking at the most recent development version of .600 for this webinar. This is going to be a little confusing, I think, because you're going to see some stuff that you just absolutely are not going to have, but that will appear in future editions of the product. Sometimes for all customers, sometimes for specific customers. 500, 6.1.500 is going to be a general release, and that'll be the version that everyone has. There is a version that is going to be called 6.1.600, which is basically 500 with some extra AI stuff in it. And that's only going to be given to selected customers, by which I mean customers who purchase specific licensed license upgrades for .600. So 600 is not going to be a general release. And some of the stuff that we're going to see today is in .600. Also, we're going to go over some best practices as we go through this, because as an administrator, there are things that are useful to know and useful to do in your system to sort of help you along with administering the system. And as we go through each one of these, screens that we're about to look at, we'll talk about some of those best practices. There's a lot of stuff in system administration, and our time is limited. So if you feel I'm going too fast about something and you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature that's down on the bottom of your screen in the Zoom toolbar to ask a question. I should see the notification on my screen that you've asked a question, and we'll stop and we'll answer your question. But we are going to have to go a little bit fast through some of this. So there's going to be a lot of information about a lot of different things. With that said, let's get to it. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go through each of the administrative screens that are available to you as a system administrator and process director, and we're going to look at them individually. And it might be a little confusing right at the very beginning because we're looking at the configuration section of Process Director. The home page of the configuration section is the workspaces page. Now, this is where all of the workspaces in your system are collected. If you have an implementation team, and I know that some of you, especially in the higher ed environment, have a lot of users that are they're kind of, let's call them temporary developers, right? They're students, often computer science students or business students, who get involved in, from semester to semester, working inside Process Director. It raises an interesting question, and I don't have any answers for you on how to administer this, but whenever you're creating applications in Process Director, you often have to either A, modify an existing workspace, or B, create a new workspace to handle that application because it may be complex and require a whole bunch of knowledge views that people need access to, perhaps different forms, whatever it may be, and it needs its own workspace. And so the question arises for you as an administrator, how do I deal with giving people the ability to create these workspaces or edit workspaces as needed, but not give them access to all of the other administrative settings in the IT admin section? You've really got two basic choices. If you want to give those people access to just the ability to work inside the configuration area, you can do that. In the user administration section, if you open up a user's account, now this user is a system administrator, so they have the ability to administer everything in the system. However, you can provide access to the four main sections, either completely by making someone a system administrator or partially by making someone either a system configuration admin, which is this property right here. You can make them a install admin, which gives them access to the installation settings, a troubleshooting admin, which only gives them access to troubleshooting, or a user admin, which gives them only access to the user administration section. So conceivably, you could make someone a configuration admin and a troubleshooting admin. If you wanted to give them access to the logs and enable them to troubleshoot things, you could do that. Or for your normal implementers, you can just give them permissions to be a configuration admin. So that is your first choice. Now, when you give someone the ability to be a configuration admin, they do have access to partitions, global knowledge views, the object permissions report, and, well, RAG management, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So whether or not you want to give them that is a question you have to answer. I think if you don't have multiple partitions, it probably doesn't matter if you give them access to partition admin. So what if they create a new partition? What are they going to do? You can just come in and erase it. It's really workspaces where they would primarily do their work. Personally, I don't think it's a big risk because then the only other thing they have access to is the object permissions report, which, by the way, might be useful for them to have access to if they're building a new application and it has some special permissions and they want to check to be sure that the appropriate permissions are set. It's just a report, so it doesn't really affect anything. So that is one path. The other path would be that as the system administrator, you could give your temporary or lower level developers just developer access to the system, which only gives them access to the content list and only those portions of the content list that they have permissions to access. But if you do that, then that means that you as the system administrator, when they create a new application and it requires either changes or additions to the workspaces that you have on your system, you're going to need to do that yourself. So you'll need to work with them, and that will, obviously increase your workload a little bit, and you'll need to decide for yourself which of those two options you want: to make them a configuration admin so that they can work in the configuration area by themselves, or whether you want to maintain much closer control over that. And then in that case, you'll have to do it. But this is where all the workspaces in the systems are. Best practice for a system administrator is to have a workspace, and it doesn't matter which one it is, you can choose which one it is, but to have a workspace that all users are a member of automatically. In other words, your default workspace, so that all of the general stuff that everybody needs to have access to inside your Process Director system, that would be the workspace that they are a member. And Inside workspace configuration, and this is where your workspaces are configured. We're not going to get into the details of how to create workspaces well, I think it's probably going to be early part of next year, sometime in January. We will be talking about workspaces and dashboards, and we'll go into detail there. But the one thing you do need to know as an administrator is you have this property. New users added to the system should be automatically added to this workspace. So you do need a generic workspace that everyone is a member of. If you don't have one set up, then when you create a new user and you create their account, and you think everything is fine, they're going to try to log into the system. They will see the login page. And then after they log in, the next thing they're going to see is a message that says, you're not a member of any workspaces, so there's nothing I can show you. And they are at a absolute dead end. There's no other place they can go. And therefore, they'll be dead in the water as far as doing anything on your system is concerned. So having a generic workspace, and whenever we first install Process Director, we have this user profile workspace. It's a pretty worthless workspace. And it's probably not a great workspace because what it shows you is running processes, which I don't think you would want to show your users, but it does show their task list and then all the forms they can submit. So we don't really design this to be the workspace that you're supposed to use, or rather, it's a very basic design. And what we would expect you to do is to be able to change this workspace around to show users the things that you want to show them. So you would need to configure this, but by default, the user profile workspace is the workspace that is whenever you first get a fresh new system installed, that'll be the workspace that everybody gets automatically added to as you create users. You don't have to keep it that way. You don't even need to use the user profile workspace. Like I said, we do expect you to do a lot of editing on it and change it around so that it suits the needs of your organization, but it's already set for users added to the system, automatically add them. You can, of course, turn it off and save it and then create your own workspace that does the same thing, but you need one that is set for new users should be automatically added to this workspace. That way, when you create a new user and they log into your system, at least they have access to sort of the basic fundamental workspace that everybody can see, even if it may not contain all of the things that they need to have access to. What that also means is that when you add new users and those users need access to multiple workspaces, you are going to need to assign them to the appropriate groups when you create their account so that they will see the additional workspaces. Which brings us to this assign users and assign groups button. The best practice, and as you can see, it is a practice that I have not implemented here, but the best practice is not to assign users to workspaces. Your best practice is to assign groups to workspaces. So that makes your workspaces role-based rather than user-based. That is by far the easiest way to manage workspaces. And whenever you add new users, presumably as part of the adding the user, you're going to add them to their appropriate groups. Whether you do it manually for built-in users or whether you have a SAML system set up that pulls in all of the groups that they're a member of as part of the SAML configuration that is set up on your system so that we know what groups they're part of. And when we assign them to those groups, if all of our workspaces are assigned via group, then membership in that group automatically gives them access to the workspaces. That's going to make your management burden of workspaces much easier because all of your group management, especially if you're a cloud customer and you're using SAML, or if you're an on-premise customer and you're using some sort of either Active Directory or LDAP sync, we're going to know what groups they're members of whenever the sync runs and their user accounts are created, and they'll automatically be assigned to those groups. And thus, as group members, will automatically have access to the appropriate workspaces. So as an administrator, those are the most important properties that you have, the assigned groups and the new users should be added. Now, you can have this checked for this new users added to the system. You can have that checked for multiple workspaces. Just be aware that every time you add a new user, they'll be a member of all of those workspaces. So that's up to you whether you want to do that or not. But in general, one of these workspaces should be checked with that add users, and you should generally assign groups, not users, to workspace, especially if you're a large organization. And we have, I know that we have at least, oh, I know we have one or more university that have tens of thousands of Process Director users. Managing by users is just going to be impossible in that scenario. So manage by groups. That's your workspaces page. We're already 15 minutes into this. I have 15 minutes. I've budgeted 30 minutes for each one of these. So we got to go through this relatively quick. Partitions, I think we can dispense with quickly. Now, as you can see on this system, I have multiple partitions. Again, it's a super weird system. I have a partition set aside specifically for documentation so that I can use that partition when I am creating documentation for all the new features that we've been adding to Process Director. And I want that segregated from all of the rest of my partitions. I have a training partition as well. And then there's a product partition, which is basically for internal use here at BP Logix. We don't want to expose all of that stuff to all users. So I generally use, when I'm on this server, the documentation permission, but there are actually 3 partitions on this server. Unless you have a specific reason for creating multiple partitions, and we have to remember, partitions are discrete areas of the server that do not interact with any other partition. So if you create a partition and you want it to work like a normal Process Director partition, then that means that in that partition, every partition needs to have its own custom tasks. Metadata on each partition is managed separately. So you're going to have to, export and import metadata between partitions to ensure they link up if that's what you need. Partitions are a pain. So unless you have a specific reason to have these areas bifurcated off that can't talk to any other part of the Process Director installation, there's no reason for you to create partitions. Most use cases that you're going to run across when you're managing a Process Director installation are going to be handled just fine via the permissions that you set up in your content list. And so therefore, partitions are generally not necessary on most systems. If you're thinking, I'd like to create a partition, all I can do is urge you to think very carefully if you have a valid reason to create an independent, what is essentially an independent Process Director installation on your installation. Basically, you're running 2 separate installations. That means that you've got to manage what users are in each partition, which is a pain because whenever you set up partitions, so let's look at the main partition that I have set up here. So whenever you set up the partitions, if a person isn't a user in that partition, then they can't see that partition at all. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, do I make someone a partition administrator so they can control the content list? Does this user get to see more than one partition? There are a lot of complex things you have to think about because what you're actually creating, basically, in my case here, I've got 3 separate Process Director installations. None of them talk to each other. They don't necessarily share users, although they can. So I might have different users in each partition. So you need to think very carefully about whether you need more than one partition on your system. Our general opinion at BP Logix is you generally need one partition per system and not to create multiple partitions unless you have a compelling reason to do so. We do have one customer that on their dev server, they have their development partition, and then they have it's on their dev machine, and then they have like, and I don't know exactly how they use it. It's like an experimental partition. So it's separate from their dev partition where they do their work, and it's an experimental partition where, I don't know, I guess they do all kinds of crazy stuff. And they feel that works for them. That's fine. You can certainly do that. Just remember, partition management adds an extra burden to your administrative duties as administrator. As always, you want to assign groups to permission, or I'm sorry, groups to partitions where possible, rather than assigning users. I do a lot of weird stuff. So sometimes I go in and assign users directly, and sometimes I remove them and I assign groups. So don't look at this system, which is purely a cutting edge development system, as an example for you. So do as I say, not as I do. By using group assignment to partitions whenever possible, which is sort of a blanket recommendation. Whatever you can do at the group level, if it's remotely possible to do it by group, do it by group, because doing things by users is going to make your life a nightmare. Global knowledge views. Don't mess with them. If you want to create new global knowledge views, you can, but don't mess with the global knowledge views. These are the only truly global objects on the system, which is to say they're available in all partitions. And the two primary ones are the content list, because the content list is in fact a knowledge view. It's a global knowledge view, and the task list. These will show up in all partitions and can be used by anyone who is a member of any partition. That's why they're global knowledge views. Don't edit these global knowledge views. Every once in a while, I get a tech support ticket that says, hey, all of our task lists are messed up. And as you investigate and you wonder, okay, well, why is that? Well, we went in and we went to the task list global knowledge view, and we filtered it to only show tasks for a certain thing. And now that we've done that, every single employee that does not do that certain thing has a blank task list. Well, yes, because that's how you've configured your system. Don't mess with these. You can create your own global knowledge views. That's perfectly fine. There's not generally much of a reason to do so, but you can. You should also be aware that global knowledge views do not have the same configuration options that you're used to in a normal content list knowledge view. For example, there's not much to do on the options tab. There is no configure tab. You do have the advanced options, which show you all of the things that it returns. This is the content list, so it returns everything at all times. You can change or create whatever columns that you want in the content list. These are the standard content list columns. And you can create a filter. As you can see in the content list, there are no filters. And it is set up with folder navigation. As you can tell, your options are much more limited than they are in a content list knowledge view. So you can create them. We have no problem with that, but please don't mess with the existing global knowledge views, because you're going to get yourself into a heap of trouble. Object permissions. This is a report, and oh, that's weird. My buttons are running up against the user drop down. It seems to be some sort of CSS problem here with this version. As you can see, I'm running the latest dev build of 6.1.600. So some things are going to be imperfect on this machine because this is really the bleeding edge version of Process Director. This is the latest development build that was installed earlier this week. So this is all as new as it gets. Object permissions is a report. It is a filterable and searchable report to return the object permissions on your system. You don't necessarily have to put in any filters up at the top. These are all the filters, what partition you want to search in, a particular folder in which you might want to search for a particular object name, search for a particular type of object, or search for a specific user to see what their permissions are on different stuff. And all that shows you is what the object is, what kind of object it is, where it's located on the system, and then it shows you all the permissions that are available to that object. This is a system that is used solely internally by process director personnel, and I am largely the only process director personnel that uses it on a regular basis. So this is basically my server. So it's pretty open. All authenticated users have access to everything. So my permissions aren't very complex, but you can search for permissions on your system to figure out who has access to what on your system. Once you get a search result back, you can click the export permissions data to CSV, and it will just export this grid that you see down here right to a CSV file, which you can then open up in Excel and use to search more carefully for information than you could here just by looking at this big long table. But it's just a report. The ability to run the report doesn't give you any access to anything that makes a system change to it. So it is a non-destructive report. In the future, especially if you're going to get 600, you're going to see this page, which is for RAG management. RAG is request enhanced generation. It's an AI feature. It's a feature of Pathfinder. What it is essentially, a RAG document is essentially a knowledge view or a knowledge base document that you're going to upload into the system. So if you have applications, maybe complex applications that have their own documentation, you can upload that document into the system as RAG data. And then when people use Pathfinder, and that's that button right there, ask Pathfinder for help. When people use Pathfinder and they ask questions about that application, because you've got its documentation in as a RAG document here, it will use that documentation to find the answer. So basically what this does is it creates your customized AI knowledge base, which is the data on which Pathfinder will be trained if you have Pathfinder running. And so you can simply add your own documentation in as RAG data, and it will just be part of the Pathfinder database. The other part of the Pathfinder database will be the basic product documentation. So all of the stuff that you find at doc.bplogix.com. So if you ask questions about the product itself, you'll get an appropriate answer. If you're asking questions about your specific application, having it in this list of RAG data, that documentation will just be added to the training information that is available to the AI, and it'll be able to answer questions by drawing stuff out of that documentation. Again, if you're not going to be a Pathfinder user, you're never going to use this. And for some installations, you're probably not even going to see the RAG management page. But if you are going to use Pathfinder, you will see it. So that's everything in the configuration section. And I managed to get it done in 30 minutes. Great. So now let's go to the user administration section. The homepage of the user administration section is, in fact, your user administration page. This is where all of your user accounts are listed. Now, this system, because it has very limited usage for basically testing purposes, doesn't have many users on it. It's basically members of our product team and the standard test users that we use everywhere at BP Logix: Diana, Barb, Rick, Eric. And those are the only users I have on this system, and they are all built-in users. You can have different types of users on your system depending on whether you're a cloud customer or whether you're an on-premise customer. For example, if you're an on-premise customer, you'll have Windows users because it is possible, as we'll see a little bit later when we get into installation settings or authentication settings, it is possible to use Windows SSO in Process Director inside your network, which will take the HTTP headers that get sent via NTLM. If you don't know what that is, and you're a cloud customer, don't worry about it. But it is the system that allows single sign-on inside Windows. What it does is it sends an HTTP message. Basically, it's a web service message. It gets sent to Process Director. It contains your username and your password and who you are in Windows. And you can actually set it up so that the first time people log into Process Director, it just goes and grabs their Windows identity, which IIS will pass to Process Director via, an NTLM request. Process Director will know who they are. It'll create their user accounts automatically. So you inside your network, if you're an on-premise customer, you can set up Windows SSO. Real easy. We'll take a look at it in a few minutes. If you're a cloud customer, you're going to do this via SAML. That's not as easy to set up. There's a whole bunch of custom variables that need to be set up to synchronize your SAML system with Process Director, but similarly, it can do the same thing. And of course, many of our higher ed customers use this exclusively. So everybody uses Okta or some similar system inside their university. So people log into their SAML system and it becomes, in essence, a very similar single sign-on system, just like Windows. If you're logged into your SAML system and you go to Process Director, you're automatically logged into Process Director as well. And if you don't have an account, we'll use the SAML data that gets passed between Okta or whatever your federated identity system is. It'll get passed to Process Director and it can create those accounts for them automatically as well. What you will see then in that case via user type, if you look at the column, will be SAML as their user. So you're going to see three possible values in the user type for every user. They can be SAML, Windows, and Windows users are not only users who get created via SSO, that is a type of Windows user, but if you're using Active Directory sync, those are also Windows users as well. And so Windows users, and in fact, SAML users have some extra properties that you don't look at too much and that won't appear for any of these users because they're all built in. But if you're a Windows or SAML user, and let's open Diana here. If you look down at the very, very top, you'll see these three properties at the very, very bottom of the page. So the object ID, well, that is your user UID. That is the GUID that uniquely identifies you as the user of this Process Director system. If you're a SAML user or an Active Directory user, you're going to have an external GUID. Now that is the GUID that identifies you uniquely in the external system, whether it's Okta or Active Directory or just a generic LDAP system. You're going to have that external GUID. That automatically gets placed into your user account every time you are synchronized. There's also a sync profile property. If you are doing an Active Directory sync profile, then this will specify, and it will again show up as a GUID, it will specify the GUID of the sync profile that synchronizes your account with either Active Directory or LDAP. It doesn't apply to SAML, but it does apply to Active Directory or LDAP synchronization. Because if you're a cloud customer, maybe you're just using a public LDAP server that can be accessed and that you're doing an LDAP sync rather than a SAML sync via Okta. So cloud customers actually have two sort of parallel paths that they can take for creating and synchronizing user accounts. That sync profile is super important because if I have a user, the same user, that gets synced in two separate AD sync profiles, Process Director is going to treat them as completely different users. So that means Barb here, if she was being synced through two LDAP synchronizations, she would have the same external GUID for both of those user accounts. Obviously, her object ID would be different for each of those accounts, and the sync profile would be different for each of those accounts. Process Director doesn't know what you intended to do. It only knows what you did. And when it comes to synchronization, if what you've done is included the same user in two different sync profiles, we're going to treat them as if they were two entirely different users. That's going to be confusing. So, and I should probably talk about this under user directory synchronization, but I've already started, so let's talk about it here. When you are setting up a user directory sync, and as you can see, there isn't one set up here, but you can set up either Active Directory or LDAP here. And that's fine. You've got to ensure that whenever you create that sync, that you don't have two different syncs that include the same users. If you do, it's going to be a huge pain for you. The user is not going to know which account they're logged in as in most cases. So it's conceivable that they could log into both accounts at various times. That's going to make that user super hard to track. There is a way to fix this if you do make that mistake. And if you do, you're going to have to contact us if you're a cloud customer. Well, actually, if you make this mistake, you're going to have to contact us. And we can give you some SQL that you can run against the Process Director database to take the duplicate user out, to remove their sync profile, their external GUID, and as long as the external GUID gets removed and the sync profile gets removed, we can then disable that user. If you have, and this is where it gets tricky, because if it's existed for a while, you may have history for both users, right? Where they have participated in processes and they've made approvals and they've submitted requests. We'll have to provide you with some SQL, if you're an on-premise customer, that will enable you to transfer all of their historical history from user B, let's say, which is the duplicate user, all to user A. So it does become a bit of a pain. So if you're going to do LDAP or Active Directory synchronization, you're going to need to set that up carefully. We'll talk about that more when we talk about user directory synchronization. Groups, happily, is super easy. This is where all of your groups come from. Now, again, you either have built-in groups or Windows groups, or I think SAML groups as well. I'm not sure whether SAML groups get counted as Windows or not, but it's just like users. But of course, each group has its own group membership with its own users. Now, group assignment can't be done by group. It can only assign users to a group. So you would have to go and assign individual users to each group. It's a heck of a lot easier if you're managing this via SAML or via LDAP. And I'll just use LDAP. So Active Directory is an LDAP system. It's just LDAP that Microsoft has made sufficiently difficult to use to be able to consider it Active Directory, but it's all LDAP. If you have LDAP users, this should happen automatically. You shouldn't have to manage any of these groups. You are probably going to want to have some built-in groups, like an admin group for your system administrators. One other thing I should say, which brings me to the admin group, is how to handle system administrators. On a dev or staging system, it's not that all fired important how you do that or how you do this, but on a production system, it is important. And most production systems, when you log in via and most cloud users use Okta or a similar federated identity thing. So they're all SAML users. So your SAML account should be your regular user account on a production system, even if you're a system administrator. Do not make your SAML account a system administrator. You're just a user when you log in via SAML. As a system administrator, you're going to need to create built-in accounts for you and individual built-in accounts for all of the system administrators on that production server. And you can make those built-in accounts system administrators, and they have full administrative access to the system. So normally when you log in, you're logging in as you in a production system. So you get whatever normal user level permissions that you should have as a user. If you want to do system administrator stuff, you're going to need to log out of Process Director, go to the login page, and log in manually as your administrative account. Each administrator should have their own unique administrator account. That means that when you go in as an administrator and you make a change to the system, we all know that it was you who did it. You're the one who's going to show up in your administrative guise. You're the one who's going to show up as the person who, deleted this knowledge view or changed these permissions or whatever it is that you did on the system. That way we can track your individual administrative actions via that specific administrator account. This is, by the way, why we do not recommend that you have a single system administrator account and share that account with multiple users. Group accounts used like that are always bad because now you're a system administrator and you can do anything you want on the system, which is cool, but so can everybody else who has access to that account. And that means that if you have 5 people who are accessing that same administrative account, then you don't know who deleted that knowledge view. You just know it was someone logged into the administrative account. You're going to want much more granular auditing of who did what on the system by ensuring that every administrator has their own unique administrator account. And so on a day-to-day basis, you'll just log in using SAML, and you'll do normal user stuff on a day in, day out basis, and you'll only log into that administrator account whenever you need to do administrator things. On a staging or production system, well, the permissions are always much more loose. A much smaller number of users accesses those systems. Permissions often hinder you from doing appropriate development work. And on those systems, you're an administrator and you log into those systems with your normal account, which makes your life easier. That's probably where you're normally going to spend most of your time as an administrator, on the dev system largely, but also possibly on staging. And it's okay to use your SAML account on a non-production system to do administrator things. So if you want to make your SAML account a system administrator, knock yourself out on a non-production system. That'll be fine. It's only on production systems that you really have to care about that a lot. There should be a group. I have a path, and we're slowly winding our way back to groups. There should be a group. And by the way, we do have a built-in group called admin, and that is the group that should have access to the appropriate admin knowledge or admin workspaces. So for example, there is an admin profile workspace, which only system administrators should have access to. And that admin profile workspace is open to, well, it actually gives you access to system admin. Also, a couple of other things here in this particular system. But This is where you actually access IT admin, usually from that admin group. I have some things here like the data flow analyzer, which if you click on the DFA thing in the navigation bar, will open up the data flow analyzer, or at least it should. It is not doing so yet, so it's obviously having to compile. And this workspace is open, this admin profile workspace is open to everyone who is a member of the admin group. So again, even for administrators, you don't need to assign individual administrators to a workspace. If we look at the admin workspace, which is probably, again, violating the rule. No, it is not violating the rule. It only has one group assigned to it, and that is the admin group. So when you create yourself as an administrator account, be sure that you add yourself to the admin group so that you have access to the admin profile. As you can see, a lot of these things are linked together in quite complex ways. So there is an admin group. It is built in. It's actually default whenever Process Director is installed. All of your system administrators should be made part of the admin group. So don't forget, whenever you create administrators, to put them in the admin group. Now, the nice thing about this is I can make group assignments in two ways. On the groups page, I can assign users to the group. And similarly, on the users page, if I open up a user's account, let's open up Barb here, I can also assign Barb to groups. So I can place Barb in the appropriate groups on the system. And if I have the groups open, I can assign users to that group. So I can do that in two ways. So let's go to the authentication settings here. For most of you, this is not something you're ever going to have to worry about. If you're an on-premise user, you're going to have to worry about it a lot, depending on how you want your system set up. Generally, you want to enable built-in authentication. You're going to need that because you are going to have built-in accounts, at least on a production system, to do administrative stuff. And there are built-in accounts that are, I think the standard accounts you get, and they're all built-in accounts whenever you first install Process Director, is there's an account called Administrator, which you're probably going to delete after you create your first administration account on your own, which again should be a built-in account. And then there's User 1 and User 2. And those are just basically dummy accounts. And as soon as you start getting user accounts in, you can delete those. But you generally want to keep enable built-in authentication on because you're going to be using built-in users and they're going to have to authenticate in on the system. So you never want to turn that off. Next, there's Windows authentication. Again, that's largely going to apply to on-premise installations only. Which will enable you to use Windows to log into Process Director and conceivably, because you have this property here, automatically add Windows users, which you can set to true, which will automatically create an account for a user when they log in via SSO. Now, this gets a little bit tricky because there are some things that I need to know about the user. I do kind of need to know what their GUID is in Windows, which is basically, Active Directory, LDAP. So I need to know what their GUID is. I need to know what their user ID is, and that will be the user ID that they use, and that's their login ID, right? Franks D, D Franks, Dale.Franks, whatever it is in your system. I'm going to need to know that. I'm going to need to know their name, their email address, and I'm going to need to grab a list of groups out of your Windows system so that I can assign them to the groups properly. So if I'm going to enable Windows authentication and I am going to automatically add Windows users, then I need to fill out all of these properties right here. I need to know their Windows active domain name so I can pull them from Windows AD. Also, for NTLM, I'm going to need to grab their HTTP headers if I want to authenticate them and do single sign-on, because you can have Windows users and still require them to sign on separately, right? So they're Windows users. They log into Windows. They're working. They decide they need to go to Process Director. They open it up. It asks for their login, and they're going to need to use their Windows credentials to log in. So, Dale.Franks and password, one exclamation point, and then they can log into the system manually. Now, if you do want them to use SSO, then that requires that we look at the NTLM request that Process Director is going to receive from IIS. And that is where we need to grab their user GUID on AD. So each request that gets sent has some HTTP headers in it. They all have unique names, and they're, especially on a Windows system, they'll generally all be the same names in NTLM, because most of the time you just keep those to the default values. But we are going to need to know their user GUID, so that's their unique ID in AD. And then we need their user ID, their name, their real name, their email, and then the list of groups that they belong to. And the NTLM request that hits Process Director contains all of this information in the request header. So you can extract all of that information, and it has to be filled out here. So you have to put all those header names, whatever they are, user ID, password, email, whatever the names of those headers are, you're going to need to put those HTTP header names here, so that whenever they log in, all of that information gets dragged out of AD and used to create their account. If you don't, and they log in manually, you've got some work to do, because the only thing I'm going to know about that user at that point is their user ID, so Dale.Franks, and their password. Those are the only two information bits that I'm going to have. I will not have an email address. Thus, I will not be able to send them any task notifications. So, because I don't really know who they are. So if you are not going to automatically create those accounts in Windows, that means that when a user's Windows account gets created, you're going to have to constantly, as an administrator, go in and check to see if there are new users, if the email is filled out. If not, you're going to have to go in and fill that out. It gets to be quite a pain. Now, that usually gets fixed, because if you're on the Windows side, you're going to do an Active Directory sync anyway at some point. And so, they might create their account at, 11 o'clock in the morning. But then overnight, when your AD sync runs, it's probably, not guaranteed, but probably going to be able to match them to your AD sync and pull them in. Generally, if you're going to do Windows users, what you want to do is not turn on automatically add Windows users. Generally, the best practice is to do an AD sync, pull in all of your users first. Now they all exist, and we know who they are, and we know what groups they belong to. Then you can open up the system to them. Their account already exists, and then you can have them log in via Windows, and we don't have to worry about all of this stuff here, because we already have it, because we did an AD sync. For SAML users, none of that matters. SAML users, that all gets handled whenever your SAML setup with Okta is configured. So Process Director, when they log in, is automatically going to use those SAML values. It's going to go out, it's going to grab those values out of their directory, or out of the SAML directory, and replicate them in Process Director. SAML and federated identity in general is often much simpler and much more straightforward, although the setup process is more complex, because we need, a lot of custom variables set up on a system. Authenticate external user. If you have an external user directory, like an LDAP directory, you're going to want to set this to true. If you're using Active Directory, you'll set it to false. But again, that's only if you're an on-premise user. If you're a SAML user, you don't really care about that. You will probably have enabled external authentication set to true, and there will be a URL that's going to need to go in here. And again, this will automatically get filled out because when we fill out the login URL in your custom VARs file, that will just automatically get replicated here. So we'll know what that URL is because it gets configured in the VARs. So generally you won't even configure this, certainly not manually. It'll just be part of the SAML configuration that BP Logix will work with you with to get set up when your cloud system is installed. There's a whole process for getting you all set up in the cloud. But that runs your authentication settings. Delegation. There are two types of delegation. There is shared user delegation and normal user delegation. They work differently. I'm getting really irked at the CSS problems I'm seeing on this server. I should not because I know it's a dev server, but it irks me. You can, as an administrator, create delegations for user. So let's say I've got Diana. She's going to be going on vacation. So I'm going to delegate all of Diana's stuff to Barb. So that gets delegated. Why does it go all the way off the page? That is so irksome. So now we've got Diana Stewart, and Diana Stewart is going to delegate to Barb. I will click the Add Delegation button. And now I have successfully established delegation. And now Diana is delegating to user Barb. This is normal delegation. I can set this up as a system administrator. In most cases, you don't have to because your users can do that in the user profile. But fine, I can delegate to Barb. Now, there are a couple of sanity checks built into this system. Barb cannot now delegate her stuff to Diana because Diana is already delegating to Barb. So we can't delegate to Diana from Barb, or at least we should not be able to. So let's go with Barb and let's delegate back to Diana. And we'll add that delegation. And there we go. We're not going to let you do that because if Diana delegates to Barb, who delegates back to Diana, that creates an unending circular flow of delegations that we aren't going to allow. Could Diana delegate, or could Barb delegate to a different user? Conceivably, yes. And we'll probably let that go through, but we're not going to allow you to do circular delegations. As an administrator, when you come to this page, your primary job is not going to be actually performing the delegations. It's going to be looking at the delegations that exist. So here's the one delegation that we have running. To get rid of it, you'll just click the remove button. In most cases, the way delegation is going to get set up is that your user is going to go to their user profile and they are going to, well, I have extra stuff here because I'm an administrator, but on their user profile, they are going to go to delegate all my tasks to user, and then they will pick the user to whom to delegate all of their tasks. And you don't really have any part in that. You don't really know what's happening. But if you do go back into user administration and you go to delegation, you will see when you open up user delegations, any user delegations that exist on the system. And as you just saw, we can click and turn those off. There's a second type of delegation called shared user delegation. This is much more complex. What this is set up to do is to allow a user, usually a C-suite level executive or thereabouts, what it allows them to do is to have an assistant or two to whom they can share their tasks. Also, in a process timeline on the advanced options tab, if it is a task that's available for shared delegation, you have to specifically note it on that task. But for those tasks that have been specifically notified for shared delegation, then a executive can identify an assistant or two who can also complete that task for them. There's a special knowledge view for shared delegation that shows each of the users, whose tasks they can delegate for. In a drop down, they can pick the user and it will show them all of the active tasks that are running, and then they can open up the task and they can perform that shared delegation. This may be the one that you do most often as a system administrator, because what you'll get is a request from an executive to say, hey, I'd like, Barb and Diana to be able to complete my tasks for me for, certain low-level tasks that I don't particularly want to be bothered with. I mean, that's what it amounts to. Let's not kid ourselves. And so you'll create that delegation. So in this case, we'll say it's Diana. And Diana wants to delegate her task to a group of assistants. So we'll add Barb. And we'll also add Eric, and then we'll enable that shared delegation. And so now if I have a task that's assigned to Diana, I can go into the advanced options tab of the activity, and I can find the enable shared delegation for this task checkbox. I can click it. And for that task, if it gets assigned to Diana, then Barb and Eric will be allowed to do that delegation. So we have this well documented in the documentation. If you have more questions about shared delegation, you can look that up there. Unfortunately, in the interest of time, we have to move on, but you should know that this page exists and that shared delegation exists, and your page will look much more attractive than it does on this development version with its many CSS problems. User directory synchronization. You're just not going to do this if you're a cloud customer. It's just not particularly relevant to you for a cloud installation. But you have the ability to create an Active Directory or LDAP sync profile. They are very similar because, as I said earlier, Active Directory is just LDAP with Microsoft bells and whistles. Some of which are even conceivably useful. But we'll look at an LDAP profile very briefly, because if you'll remember, when I talked to you earlier, I talked about ensuring that I don't have multiple synchronizations that bring in the same user. These properties are the super important one. Actually, it's the AD domain. We're going to grab the users out of a specific domain, and we're going to grab users out of a specific root path. Now, we have on-premise customers who use a couple of different root paths, and they have learned, surprise, surprise, that as people transfer from one division of the company to the other, they have different accounts and they get synced differently or they appear in multiple syncs. So best practice is to ensure that the root path that you use in Active Directory is broad enough to capture everybody that you want to capture. Depending on how many users you have, we understand that that might not be possible because it might take, 12 hours to run an Active Directory sync. Because you're trying to sync thousands of users. And perhaps many of those thousands of users don't need to be synced because they're never going to access the system. It's hard to square that circle. It's hard to fix that problem, but we know how to fix it. We know how, whenever you create a duplicate user, trust me, it's a situation we've handled before. Give us 5 minutes and we'll tell you how to fix it. And if you want to get us on a Zoom call, we can probably do it for you in 5 minutes. We know what the SQL is. We know where the information gets duplicated. We know how to unify all that stuff. So it's not going to be that big of a worry, but it is going to be a little bit of a pain when you run that AD sync, when you have duplicate users that come from an AD sync profile. If you're an on-premise user, this might be applicable to you. If you're a cloud user, you don't care because you're never going to do an AD sync profile, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to go ahead and cancel that. And in fact, I'm going to delete this AD sync profile because we don't need one on this system. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're close. I'm sweating here trying to keep up with everything we got to talk about. Just like in the configuration section, we have an object perms report. We have a user perms report in the user administration section. So we can actually, in object perms, we're looking for specific objects to see what, or a set of objects to see what the permissions are. In user perms, obviously we're looking for a user to see what their permission is on various objects. So when we run an object perms report, we get a list of object and all of the users that have various permissions to that object. On the user perms, we return users and we see all of the objects to which they have permissions. So it's largely the inverse of the object perms report, but it's in here because it's often a lot easier to search for a specific user and find out what their permissions are than it is to try to search for a particular object and find what all the users that might have permission to a set of objects. You need both. Just like the object perms report, you can export the user permissions perms report to a CSV file, which you can then open in Excel. User references is a very useful report because what it enables you to do is to do a search on the system to see where a user is referenced on that system. So if we pick Barb, because I'm fairly sure that Barb has a reference on that system. No, she does not. So let's try me. And it's not returning anything for me either. Oh, I know why it's not returning anything for me, because I don't have any tasks assigned to me. I assign everything to Timeline Initiator. So I don't know that I'm going to be referenced anywhere. Barb, let's try Diana to see if I've got anything assigned directly to Diana in this system. No, I don't. This is largely a training system. I don't have any tasks assigned to Barb or Diana. What I should see when I run this report is a list of all of the objects that references Barb or Diana or whoever I pick. For example, if they have task assignments in a particular process timeline, I should be able to see them. Again, I generally assign everything to Timeline Initiator for demo purposes, and so thus I don't have anything assigned to anybody. Nobody is assigned to do anything on this system except Timeline Initiator. But this would show me a report of all of the objects that in which that specific user is referenced. It's mostly going to be, timeline definitions, but it could be form definitions, I suppose, conceivably, or business rules or something like that. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any references like that, so can't see anything on the report. We'll move on. It's not super important. You just need to know that it exists for you. All right. I'm only 8 minutes behind time at this point. So let's talk about installation settings. There's a couple of tricky bits in here that you're going to need to pay attention to. First off, always ensure, and this is largely for on-premise customers because we fill this out for you if you're a cloud customer, you need to have that interface URL filled in on the properties page of installation settings. There are a lot of functions in Process Director where we use the interface underscore URL system variable on the fly to construct URLs, like URLs to forms and things like that. If you don't have the interface URL filled out, then that's all going to be wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. It's also really important that you do not include the trailing slash on the interface URL. Don't do that, because when we automatically construct a URL, it won't be one slash, there will be two, and the URL will fail. So you should have an interface URL. It will save you a lot of problems if you do. And just remember, don't add a trailing slash on that interface URL. If you don't have a proxy, we don't have one set up. I'm not even sure why I filled this out. I'm sure I did it as a demo for something at some point. But if you are using a proxy, which as a cloud customer, don't worry about this. But if you're an on-premise customer and you're using a proxy, you'll need to put that proxy URL in as well. Document attachments. By default, document attachments are stored in the Process Director database. They're stored as binary files in the database. That's generally okay, except we do have some customers that have, I have one customer that actually has commercials, the video of their commercials that they put onto Process Director. You're going to be doing a lot of that. You probably don't want to store large video files inside the file system. So you have a choice. You can store on the file system or you can store on the database. So this is set to true, to store documents on file system. I don't know whether I just changed that or not. I'm going to set it to false for this. And if it's set to false, which is the default value, it'll store items in the Process Director database. If you set store documents on file system to true, then you're going to need to put in the file storage path for that document. Now remember, it needs to be an accessible storage path that the server can see. So if you're an on-premise customer, it needs to be an accessible folder path inside your organization, and you need to put in the appropriate UNC to find that particular storage path. If you're a cloud customer, we'll provide the file storage path for you, and we'll point it to a file share that we maintain in Azure that your Process Director installation can look at. You have a third option here as well, which says, okay, look, if the file size of this document in bytes is smaller than, let's say 1 megabyte, and this is in bytes, so we're going to go with 1 million there. If it's smaller than 1 megabyte, and actually 1 million is not 1 megabyte, but it's close enough for government work. If it is larger than the specified size, go ahead and store that in the file system. If it's smaller than that, like a Word document, 72 kilobytes, okay, great. Store that in the Process Director database. We can grab that super easy, because it doesn't have to be, converted from binary back into the actual file format that gets displayed. You can also say, okay, let's do this. Let's move documents to the file system after a specified period of time, number of days. So let's say, look, if I've had this thing here for 30 days, then go ahead and transfer it from the database to the file storage system. So it's basically kind of like an archival system. The next thing that we have to concern ourselves with, now, if you're a cloud customer, you're going to need to contact us. We'll get this document file storage path stuff set up for you properly. If you're on premise, you're going to obviously have to do it yourself. Local IP addresses. You have to be super careful as an administrator what you put in here, because each one of these IP addresses, if you are coming from that IP address, you will now get to basically run Process Director as if it was running on your local machine. That gives you access to all kinds of goodies, um, including the ability to just RDP into it, um, especially if you're on an on-premise installation. You got to be real careful with this. You want the minimum number of IP addresses who can treat Process Director like a local machine. It's not so much because I can log into the thing and run it locally. It's because any function that I run, like a web service or something like that, I get to run it as if I was running it on the server itself. Now, when you're logged into a local server, you have a greater set of permissions to do possibly pernicious things than you would if the server was treating you as a remote user. If you're a remote user, there are just some things that Windows is not going to allow you to do. If you're logged in locally, you're an administrator. You've pretty much got godlike control over that machine, and we're going to let you do anything you want. So really limit the IP addresses who can log in as if they were running the machine locally, because the machine will treat them like a local administrator who is logged directly into the server. Now, on a cloud system like this one, yeah, good luck with that. You're going to have to be on the network, and you're going to have to be on the VPN, and most of these local users will be Process Director or BP Logix employees. We are probably, although not definitively, but we are probably going to be skeptical of your request to be a local IP address on the server, because that's going to give you access to more things than just Process Director, and we're going to get real nervous about that. So for cloud customers, don't worry so much about it, but for on-premise users, really worry about that a lot. Most of the other things here are not super important because most of you don't do load balancing. If you are a customer, you should have a BP Logix company ID there. That's the ID that we supply. And if you're a cloud customer, we'll supply that for you. If you're an on-premise customer, you should know what that is, because we'll have provided it to you. You should put that in there. It makes doing some things for tech support a little bit easier, having that set up. Logging level. I don't know why this is set to 2. I'm going to reset that to 0. That is our normal logging level. The higher the logging level you set up, and it could be one of our engineers set this up at 2. So even though I didn't set it, I can see why somebody would do it. The more logging that you ask for, the more verbose your log files are going to be. And anything at logging level 3 or above will impact system performance, because it's going to be doing a ton of logging. Now, if you're trying to troubleshoot a problem, it's okay for you as an administrator to go in and say, look, I'm going to set my logging level to, say, 3. And I'm going to do the thing, whatever the thing is. And then once I've done the thing and I've got the logs for me doing the thing, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to set this back to 0 so that my log files don't puff up like a tick. So logging level is important. Check your system. If you're running at logging level, well, first of all, you should not be running at anything over logging level 2. Also, you should not be running under normal circumstances at logging level 1 or 2. You should be doing the normal logging at logging level 0. And you should not be increasing that logging level unless you have a valid reason to do so. And once you have got the logs that you wanted, set your logging level back to 0. The higher the logging level you have, the more it impacts system performance, because now there are more and more and more things that I am going to have to log. And by the time you get to logging level 5, the amount of logging the system is doing is ridiculous, and it will slow your system down perceptibly, is the kind way of saying that. So be super careful with those logging levels. Best practice, keep them set to 0 unless you need them higher. All the other things, don't really care much about this. CSS, logo URL, that's great. You can have your own logo URL, blah, blah, blah. But let's get down here to SMTP. Now, I want you to note the way that this is set up. Whenever you send SMTP, you have a couple of different choices. The choice that we recommend is that you use Mail Relay. If you're going to be using your own system, we recommend that you use Mail Relay. And this is true for, local installations or cloud installations. What Mail Relay does, what that means is I go onto my mail server, and on that mail server, I say, look, I want you to relay all mail from a specific IP address, which in this case would be the IP address of this process director installation. If you do that, then we can actually set up just the host name of the email server as the relay server, and we will use Mail Relay. We'll send the email directly to, in this case, exchange.bplogix.com. And as long as that email is coming from this specific IP address, whatever it is for this machine, 172. whatever, as long as it's coming from that specific IP address, our exchange.bplogix.com mail server will actually do the mail processing and will send the mail out. The reason why you want to do this is because the relay method gives us the best logging for what happened with your email. If the mail server rejects your email, we're going to get much more verbose and helpful logging information from the email server as to why it decided not to send that mail message. So Mail Relay is your best option for setting up how you want your process notifications to be sent out. It also has the virtue of coming through your email system from your email addresses. It's a much better way of setting up Mail Relay. For some of you, I do see that you have set up an SMTP host and a port, and you're using a user ID and password, which means that you are using a specific email account on your mail server to send that email. And you set it to true or false as to whether you require SSL, although I think nowadays that just defaults to true. You can do it that way, and you can send via a specific email account on your mail system. Now, this is set up with standard authentication, no OAuth. Most of you are going to have Microsoft 365 OAuth, so you're going to need to provide the tenant ID and the client ID and the SMTP secret and all of the other stuff. Fine, you can certainly do that. But the problem is that you're using a specific mail account to send that email. That's going to be a problem in terms of logging and in terms of troubleshooting, because you are not going to get good information back. What happens is we're going to go into that mail account. We're going to open it with the credentials you provided. We're going to stick an email message in there. Then we're going to close our connection to that mail account. And if that mail doesn't go, A, we may not know it. And B, if we do know, we're not going to be able to tell you why, because all we're going to get is a failure to send, a generic failure to send from your mail server. So we do recommend that you use Mail Relay. And I know your mail server guys and your internal IT are going to grumble about, I don't know why we're doing Mail Relay and I don't want to put that external URL in, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, it's only going to accept mail from a specific IP address, the IP address of your process director server. So, have them dial the paranoia back from 11. Use Mail Relay. It really is the most reliable and also the most informational method of setting up Mail Relay. Now, for some of you who are cloud customers who are not using your own system, we handle all that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Web service enabled. I'm now picking out I'm trying to pick out just the important things, but boy, it's taking a long time to go through this. If you don't need web services enabled, don't enable them. Web services are dangerous. Web services give a user who can access them full administrative control over your machine. They can start, stop processes, they can reassign users, they can delete users. There's all manner of malefactions that they can commit on your server. So, by default, we don't want to enable web services. Okay, if we are going to enable web services, there's two things that we're going to need. First of all, we're going to want to require web service authentication so that we know who is making these web service commands so that they can be positively identified. And we're going to want to impose web service restrictions. Web service restrictions is a comma-separated list of the IP addresses that are allowed to run a web service. Most of the time, you want these web service restrictions to be confined to the IP address of application servers that exist somewhere on your network that have access to the real world, to actually send web service requests in from the application server. Now, your users will access the application server to do the request, but it's the application server itself that has the ability to go to Process Director and run a web service command of some type. So it's certainly possible that you might need to enable web services, especially if you have your own application servers that you want to be able to do things on Process Director, largely to pull information out of it to display to your end users in your organization. But ensure that you properly limit the IP addresses that are allowed to access your service via web services. Unless you have a specific need to have web services running, turn them off. Because, like I said, essentially anything with access to web service potentially has full administrative control over your machine. So unless you specifically need web services, don't turn them on. The rest of this stuff is all Microsoft 365 used for collaborative document authoring, so we don't need to worry our pretty little heads about that. Global variables on our system. Now, these are basically just the global variables that determine how things work on the system. Most of these, the defaults are what you're going to keep, and you're never gonna make any changes to them. However, there is one that is important, and was in here. Enable client validation, email responses. Okay. No, there it is. Finally, I found it. Boy, I was like thinking, am I blind? It is the workflow from email address. So here's the deal. Whenever we send notifications from any timeline, for any task, any user task that gets assigned in the system, when we send the notification, it generally needs a from email address. Now, where that from email address is primarily coming from this property here. It says in the little tooltip that pops up, this is an optional value. And technically that's true, but in reality, it is not. You need to specify whether it's no dash reply at your organization name, whatever it is, you need to specify that workflow from email address, because that is going to be the default email address that we look to send email notifications as the from address. Now, you can overwrite this in every individual email template. So on the email email data control on your email template, if you put in a from email address on that email data control, then that from email address supersedes the workflow from email address. So that email configured on an email data control, that is the highest level of from email address in terms of priority that gets applied to the email. If you have not specified something in the email data control, then it's always going to use workflow from email address. If you do not have a workflow from email address, which believe me, you should, but if you don't have one, then back over here on properties, there is a fallback, and it is registered email. And now there's so many properties on this page. We're going to hit Control F and look for registered. There we go, registered email. So this is our first fallback email address. If we do not have either an email address in the email data control or an email address in the workflow from email address, it will then fall back to registered email. So that's our first fallback. We do have a final fallback. If none of these have an email address in them at all, then our final fallback will be, I believe, it's one of our support email addresses. And I don't remember what it is, but it is documented inside the system administrator documentation as to what that email address, but it's a standard BP Logix email address. So it will look as if we are emailing your organizational member, not like you are emailing them. So you do want to have both a registered email here as your primary fallback, and you're going to want to set up your default workflow from email address here so that you have a standardized email address. Now, if you want to override that in an email template using the email data control, perfectly fine. You can do that, but you do need to have that workflow from and that registered email address. Note, I did not talk about the registered email address until we got to this page because it is a fallback. But the configuration is on the properties page rather than on the global variables page. There's not much more that we need to talk about on the global variables page, so we will skip ahead to Pathfinder variables. Not going to spend a lot of time on this either. If you decide to use Pathfinder, that's the little AI deal that we have here. We can ask questions. If you decide to use Pathfinder, which I believe is going to be an additionally licensed component, so it's going to, it ain't going to be free. There is some special Pathfinder configuration that needs to be set up. It is set up here. And similarly, if you're going to get Pathfinder, you'll have that RAG page that we looked at earlier, so that you can upload custom documentations to provide custom training to Pathfinder to answer questions from users. But we're actually using Microsoft Azure AI Foundry to provide our backend, which gives us the choice of different models to use, whether it's OpenAI's model or whether it's Claude. We have choices. How OpenAI became the lead AI LLM, I don't know, because it's awful, especially after you've used Claude, especially for tech work. But All that aside, if you're going to use Pathfinder, this is where we're going to set up your Pathfinder system because we're using Microsoft Azure AI Foundry to get that set up. PDZ certificates. This is a brand new feature that will be available to enable digital signing of PDZ files. If you want to go onto YouTube and look back at Tuesday's training webinar, I covered this in detail, creating certificates and stuff. But essentially, what this enables you to do is to create a certificate on your server to sign all PDZ files that you export off of that server. On your other servers, you'll need to set up their own private certificate so you can export back from that server. And once you have your certificate set up, which is a private certificate, a PFX file, you can then import your certificates from your other servers. Those are the cert files, the public certificate files, so that whenever you import from those servers, you have the public certificate so that it can verify that that PDZ file was signed and you know where it's from. So this is a feature that none of you have now, but it will be a .500 feature, so you will all have it in a month or so, hopefully. If you're a cloud customer, two things that you're not going to see. You'll only see it if you're an on-premise customer. Well, you'll see it on the cloud if you're a managed server user. The database settings page and the licensing page. I'm not going to talk much about each of these pages, especially since most of you are cloud customers, but this is where all of the database connection strings are set up on your system. There used to only be one connection string, and since SQL Server is our backend, it's always system data SQL client, but you do have the choice between SQL Server and Oracle. If you're cloud, it's all on SQL Server. We used to have one database connection string, so that was the only two properties on this page. We now have a database connection string for privileged operations, so anything that actually affects the processor, the process director database for either dropping tables or creating tables or changing a schema of a table in the process director database. That requires a separate connection string that's privileged. And coming up, we're going to have a database cache connection string. So we can cache the database, and rather than hitting the regular process director database, we can just go back and hit a cache. Like any cache database, the cache is only as current as whenever the cache was last created, but we are adding those two new features into Process Director to basically use your main database connection string to read data, to have a privileged connection string that can actually write data, and then a database cache connection string to look at data that has been saved and cached in a much more tabular, sort of less highly normalized format than the regular process director. So to enable you to more easily grab some cached data, although of course that data will only be current as of when the cache was created. If you're a cloud customer, don't worry about it. You'll never see this page. We'll handle it all for you. Similarly, licensing page. The licensing page is, I have something in the search bar. Control F. Let me backspace out of that. Well, it's showing me something here. Let me kill that. I was seeing the highlighting over here, and I didn't want that. So let me resize my screen back to where it was. Sorry. There we go. Licensing page. This is all the licensing information for your Process Director installation. It is useful to see the license key and the validation token we take care of completely if you're a cloud customer. But it does tell you what all of the different licenses are that you have for your Process Director installation. If you're a cloud customer, You have everything, so it's really not important to see. If you're an on-premise customer, especially if you are still using the old tiered license deal, um, well, you're going to be seeing a lot of stuff here that you don't have. In fact, we just got somebody who said, "Hey, I can't make any reports. I go to create new and reports doesn't appear." Yeah, you don't have the advanced reporting component, so you don't get to see it. So subscription customers and cloud customers largely get everything. So this is a much less important page. So important, unimportant fact that we're going to skip past it. All right. Last leg, troubleshooting. The first page, the home page of the troubleshooting section is server control. Server control has a whole bunch of links that when clicked will do different things on your system. Here's something kind of cool. A lot of the stuff that you can do from the server control page, and by the way, there's little explanations about what each one of these links do. So you can run the timers, and you can, if you haven't done it yet, although probably all should have, you can migrate to AES encryption. You can move documents between the database and disk, and run your basic HTML and ASPX tests. And that's all cool. You also have these messages that you can have set seen for all users. Now notice on my environment message seen by all users, which you see right there, that is the message that we're seeing up here at the very top of the page. That is the environmental message seen by all users. I find it very useful, especially so I can just look on the server that whatever I'm working on, and I can see what environment I'm in. That's cool. But you also have this other message that allows you to create a banner up here at the top in this area. And that banner message will say different things. So there's my banner message. I will click the set message seen by all users, and there we go. There's a banner message up there at the top of my screen. And that's a permanent message until I delete it and reset the set message seen by all users. Now, as I was saying, there's some stuff hidden here. You don't see all of the server control stuff. To see that, you would have to go to debug mode and turn debug mode on and then reload the page. And when I do, oh, there are other things that I can do. These are all debug related things. So there are several new debug related things. I said several new. Different is what I meant to say. There's several different debug things where you can, check up on what's going on in Process Director. And of course, if you turn debug mode off, then those will all disappear. Most of the time, you're not going to use them anyway. This is the stuff that you often use. For example, if I'm on a dev server and I have something on a timer and I want to kick it off, I'll just go here and punch the timers. What is it? Run timers right there. And it'll just force all the timer routines to be run immediately. That way I can see if a timer is working. So it's a useful page that allows you to check on different things on how your system is working. System information is a page that gives you general information about your system. There's a fair amount of stuff on it. It is entirely informational, but it's often useful to see. A new page that is coming up is called Live Stats, and that will show you what is going on your system right now. For example, it's looking at all of our HTTP request counters, and it is at specified intervals going ahead and redoing all of the stuff. It just tells you what's going on your system. It just shows you what the live stats are on your system. Now it just popped again. So now I have a third one that tells me what it's rendering, what checks are being done, set system bars is being called. And it just keeps refreshing. You can pause it and you can clear it and turn on auto scroll. But live stats, cool. But again, like system information, purely informational. Microsoft 365 migration. Not going to matter to most of you because most of you are not going to use Microsoft 365 for collaborative document authoring. For most people who use CDA, you're just going to use the standard only Office service. You'll be fine. Only if you're going to use Microsoft 365 for CDA are you going to need to worry about any of this. But if you have some local documents that already exist and you need to get them over into your Microsoft 365 system, we have a migration set up. I think, except for a very tiny number of customers, this is going to be unused for a while because, and in fact, it's probably only an interim thing because if you're already using CDA and you decide you want to use O365 and migrate, you'll do it once and then be done. For any new customers, they're probably just gonna start off using CDA, so they'll never use this page. But in any event, this page exists and is part of our setup of using Microsoft 365. What used to be Office 365, and before that, Office Online, now it's M365 because, you know, the old names weren't quite good enough, I guess. Unless you're doing that, that's not going to be interesting. Okay. I do have the appropriate administrative rights because I'm logged in as BPL support. So why am I seeing that message? Installation settings, troubleshooting, and impersonate. Oh, come on. I have to have impersonate. All right. Log out. Fine. Let me log back in as me. Log in. Fine. And I'm still going to have to go back to. No, actually, I've got everything I need right here. Okay, so all the stuff I needed to log in as a managed support user were passed. Okay, now I can impersonate people because I'm me. So if you want to impersonate a user, you can. This is the impersonation page. Not as important as it used to be because I can go there directly from impersonate user if I have the ability to impersonate another user. And so if I click that, it'll take me right back to that page just without the header. And I can pick a user like Diana that I can impersonate. When you do, I will see the system exactly as that user does. Very useful. If I do anything on the system will record it as Diana or Barb or whoever having done it, but it will also say it was actually done by Dale, who was impersonating Diana. So she didn't really do it. Dale did it, but he said he was her. It's going to note when you impersonate somebody that you were in fact impersonating them. So you're not going to get away with any shenanigans that way. Audit logs. Now, this is only if you have set the audit logs custom variable. By default, the logs, as we'll see when we look at the next page, are stored as text files. However, for the audit logs, you can store them in a database, in the process director database, in fact. And if you do so, then you have the ability to go in and search, and I don't have anything stored in the database, so it's turned off on this system. But there is a custom variable whose name escapes me at the moment, although I'm pretty sure we can find it. Oh, look, there's the data flow analyzer. Cool. Let's go to doc. And let's go to system administration because it will tell me where I need to go. IT admin area, troubleshooting, audit logs, and to make it work, I do need the F audit log file only variable. That variable should be set to true. No, it should be set to false. If I set the F audit log file only to false, I need to change this because it should be set to false there, not true. Well, I guess I'll be publishing documentation um, today. If I set F audit log file only to false, it will save all of the audit logging into a process directory database. Now that is cool because just like my permissions report, I can search that database for any of the auditable events that have occurred on the system. The more people you have on a system, the more verbose this log gets and the bigger and bigger your table gets. And so there are another set of custom variables to limit exactly how long you store that data for. There is in audit log days. So let's say I only want to store, this says 10 days, but let's give ourselves some extra time. You might want to set this to, 30, 60, or 90 days so that you have, 1 to 3 months of data. That way, if you find out something untoward has happened on your system, you have 90 days worth of audit log data to go back and look and see who changed the permissions on this knowledge view or who deleted this item or whatever it might be. You can find those audit log items and you can search for, audit logs for a specific object or inside a specific date range. It's super useful. I do recommend that you turn on audit logging because it makes your life a lot easier. The logs page has all of the different logs that exist in the system. You have 5 major types of logs: script logs, the internal logs, and the internal logs by far your most useful log file because it shows you everything that's going on in the system. You also have the email logs, which tell you what emails got sent. As you can see, the emails are all going to either Diana or me on the system, and there haven't been a lot of emails that get sent. Then you have your audit logs, and the audit logs are everybody who's done anything on this system. Obviously, it'll largely be me that gets listed in the audit logs. Now, all the audit logs are text files. In the reader itself, you can actually see the current log, which is main, and the previous 4 log files. There are actually 12 log files that get saved. When a log file reaches 2 megabytes, it goes from being the main log file to being backup 1. And then backup 1 gets renamed to backup 2, and so far until it gets to backup 12, and backup 11 gets renamed backup 12, and then backup 12 gets deleted. Actually, that happens in reverse, but in any event. So I have 12 log files. So they actually exist on my system as text log files. In the log reader, I can only go back to the main and the first 4 backups. So the last 8 backups I can't look at, depending on how busy your system is, because the size of the log file is what determines when a new log file gets started and all the others get, backed up as one of the 12 previous log files. So depending on how much is going on in your system, you might be able to go back fairly far in time, or you might not be able to go back far in time at all, because these log files, especially if you're at a higher logging level, these log files, like I said earlier, do puff up like a tick. And so, I could have my backup log file, in my i.bkp12 file, I can look at, and it might only take me back 6, 7 hours or 3 hours or an hour, depending on how verbose your log files are and how high your logging is set. So you do have the ability to download your logs. So just click download logs as zip. It will download the log file, your properties file as well, and your bars file so that you can, look at all of them. These log files, it'll want to open them up and I often open them up in Visual Studio Code and I read them as log files. However, you can also open them up as CSV files. So you can open them up in Excel. Not all the columns will always perfectly match exactly, but sometimes it does make finding stuff a little easier if you open up these log files as CSV Excel files. We are going to run this right up to the deadline, clearly, but this is my run email test page. So on your system, I get this quite a lot. Hey, an email notification didn't go out. Now, from my perspective, is that true? Did an email notification not go out? Did it get caught inside the user spam folder? Okay, fine. The first thing you should do as an administrator, before you even submit a tech support ticket to start complaining about emails, check to see if the emails are working on your system. That's what the run email test page enables you to do. You can put in a from and a to address. We've already filled in a subject and a body for you. And you can simply send a test email to see if it went. If it went successfully, as you can see, emails are not enabled on this system, so I can't send a mail. But if you send the test mail, I send test mails to myself all the time. When you tell me my system is not sending mail, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to your system. I'm going to go to the run email test page, and I'm going to email myself an email. And if I receive it, I'll know that you are not completely accurate in your assessment of what is going on because I've received an email from you. And so your emails are obviously working. By default, the run email test page will use the settings that you have set up on the properties page of installation settings, where we looked at the SMTP setup previously. If you'll remember, the server is set to do mail relay through exchange.bplogix.com or bplogix.exchange.com. So by default, it will use your current settings to send an email. If you send an email and it says email sent successfully whenever you send it, then your email is working. And so if somebody did not receive an email, then maybe the problem lies elsewhere. If you can send yourself a test email, and if you can send that user a test email, well, then there may be a problem with your configuration or a problem with your process, or maybe there was just a comms issue at the time that that email went out. But it's important to know before you do anything else, if you have any sort of suspected email problem, before you do anything else, you should go to this page and run an email test so that you can verify whether or not email is even working on your system. If it's not, okay, that's a pretty big problem. If it is working on your system, then we have to start drilling down into what might be happening with an email not getting to a specific user. Also, if you are running on your own email system, like here on our system, if you're running on your own email system, and that's the one that's sending email, and you get an email not sent, we cannot help you with figuring out why that email wasn't sent. You're using your own email system. That error came from your system. You're going to need to contact your internal IT personnel and ask them for the mail logs to ask them why that system or that email didn't get sent. Because if you see it in the email logs, that, error, failure sending email, that means that we tried to send the email and your system said no. So therefore, you need to check your system as to why that email didn't go. So run your email anytime there's an email question. First thing to do, go to run email tests, run one, then try to figure out what's happening beyond that. Finally, there is the help page. The help page is not a page, it's a button that simply opens up the process director documentation. And that is the last thing that you can click in the system administrative section in IT admin. So let's stop sharing and It's 11:58. I got to shut up now, but I did manage to get through it in 2 hours. So I'm very proud of myself that I didn't get too far behind time. Have a great week. I'm not going to see you next week. Next week's Thanksgiving. So have a great holiday. We'll look forward to seeing you in the first week in December. Until then, so long.